special meeting of the Planning Commission is called to order at 7 p.m. Pacific time. We will now take a moment for silent prayer or mediation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Assistant Planner Jerry.
All right. Put your right hand over your hearts. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Paulina, can you do roll call?
Good evening. Yes, Commissioner Hing.
Here.
Commissioner Lewis.
Here.
Vice Chair, Commissioner Becerra is not here yet. Vice Chair Williams.
Present.
And Chair Gutierrez.
Here. Great. We don't have minutes from the regular meeting on October 24th, 2023 of the regular meeting, so we will now move on to oral communications. Would anyone like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda today? Seeing none, tonight we have one continued public hearing item for the general plan amendment number 23-02, zone change number 23-02, and code amendment development code update number 23-01 with an initial study, negative declaration of environmental impact. Paulina, who would do the staff report?
Good evening again. We're going to have John Moreland, our consultant, provide the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Paulina. John Moreland with Rincon Consultants, and I'll be handing the presentation off to Susan Hernandez.
Good evening, Commissioners. I will be presenting the Development Code update. So this is a recommendation for the Planning Commission to adopt Resolution 236134, 6135, 6136, and 6137, recommending to the City Council to adopt the initial study and negative declaration, General Plan Amendment number 02, Zone Change number 02, Code Amendment, the Development Code Update number 2301. In the previous Planning Commission hearing held on October 10th, 2023, we received comments to revise various sections of the Development Code, which we will go into more detail later. We also received comments to re-notify the public regarding the Development Code update of this meeting. City staff posted the notice of the meeting on their social media platforms. It was sent out through email blasts, and the project documents were posted on the project website. In the previous Planning Commission hearing, we received comments to review and revise the following sections: fence and wall height, alcohol establishments, emergency shelters, home occupations, massage parlors and health and beauty spas, mobile services, outdoor dining, tree trimming, the general plan amendment, land use change, and wireless telecommunication facilities. So the comment received for fences in the Development Code was regarding the maximum height that will be allowed by right. This section was revised so that the properties will be allowed to have a fence that is a maximum of 7 feet in height in the rear and side yard setback. Additionally, properties with a difference in grade in the rear and side yard setback will be allowed to have a maximum of 13 feet for the lower property, as depicted on the picture here. Other revisions included the following. Alcohol establishment standards were revised to clarify that violations of the provisions will result in revocation of the permit as per revocation standards of Article 6. Emergency shelter standards were revised to remove the first come, first serve admittance requirement that required facilities to only admit clients between 6 p.m. and 7 a.m. The home occupation standards were revised to update language to broaden the use of common residential utilities. Massage parlor and health and beauty spa requirements were revised to only prohibit doors for businesses where massage is an accessory use. Mobile service standards were revised to specify that mobile services shall not include services that create a nuisance in accordance to Chapter 15 of the Municipal Code. The language for outdoor dining was revised to clarify that outdoor dining area shall be kept clear from pedestrian and vehicular rights of way and not to obstruct the line of sight for pedestrians and drivers, or shall not impede access to city and public utilities. It is now specified that new outdoor dining facilities shall require an administrative permit. Additionally, language was added to specify that no permit is required for emergency tree trimming for trees on private or public property. And though we did not receive comments regarding kiosks, such as water fill stations and key duplication kiosks from the last Planning Commission hearing, city staff has received some inquiries regarding water fill kiosks. The previous zoning ordinance did not have regulations for these types of uses, and after receiving these inquiries, regulations were added. So the regulations for kiosks include that a kiosk may be an accessory use to another commercial use, such as a grocery store, or it may be a standalone use. If the kiosk is unattended, then it can only be permitted in conjunction with a larger retail use. If it is a standalone kiosk, then it shall have an attendant. Requirements and conditions for standalone kiosk include that the placement shall not create a parking deficit, and the kiosk shall be maintained and free of litter. In the previous public hearing, a comment was received regarding the general plan land use change for the properties owned by Northwest College. Previously, the general plan amendment included to change the land use from public institutional to commercial. However, after further consideration, the general plan use for these properties will continue to be public institutional. The zoning change from planned industrial to neighborhood commercial use was changed so that these properties could match the other properties also owned by Northwest College. And this zone change won't inhibit Northwest College from operating as usual.
And Commissioners, I just wanted to add that we were able to talk to the property owner and regarding this, and talk to him today. And the property owner expressed what essentially they wanted is they didn't want any of their uses or buildings on site to be non-conforming, and we provided analysis between the existing planned industrial zone and the proposed neighborhood commercial zones. The neighborhood commercial zones allows for more uses than the planned industrial. One of the uses that's not permitted in the planned industrial zone is actually a private college use. So technically it's legal non-conforming today. And all the development standards, with the exception of height, the setbacks are less restrictive than in the planned industrial zone. The height difference is essentially 35 feet within 100 feet of residential, is 35-foot limit within 100 feet of the single-family residential for the industrial zone, and 25 feet within 100 feet of residential zone for the neighborhood mixed-use zone. All buildings are one story, so it would meet the requirement. And also, just to add for context, we also found out that the Northwest College, the properties to the west, have been owned. They're owned by the college, owned by the family that started the college. They essentially purchased the industrial property decades ago, and that's essentially kind of how that area grew. And I'll hand it back off to Susan.
Wireless telecommunications. Another comment received during the last Planning Commission hearing was regarding the requirements for wireless telecommunication facilities. And we received comments to compare West Covina's regulations to other cities, including Diamond Bar and Walnut. So Diamond Bar only permits wireless telecommunication facilities in certain zones. They require a setback from residential of 50 feet or the height of the antenna plus 20%. And they require a public hearing notification of a 500-foot radius. Walnut prohibits telecommunication towers and antennas 1,500 feet from residential zones, and they require a public hearing notification of a 500-foot radius. After further analysis, we recommend that West Covina require a 500-foot radius from single family and a 100-foot radius from multifamily zones, and a public hearing notification of 500 feet of a 500-foot radius.
Can you explain the 100 feet meaning?
Or
elaborate on it a little bit?
is that from the property line or is that from the structure?
From the property line.
Okay.
The wireless facility structure itself, the wireless facility itself to the property line of the multifamily residential.
Appreciate that clarification.
Apartments, condos.
Sorry, and this is an important topic. And why would it be 100 feet compared to 500 feet for those properties?
It's multifamily residential zone, so most of the commercial areas in the city can potentially be developed with multifamily. So it would preclude it would prevent most of the city from having a wireless facility if we made it 500 feet.
So what is considered multifamily? Is that 2 or more units? Would that be a house with an ADU?
Well, regarding an ADU, it depends because you can also build an ADU on multifamily zones. So it would be 2 or more units, yes.
What does Walnut have? Or Diamond Bar in this case?
500 feet.
So Diamond Bar, they have a setback of 50 feet from residential. So that includes single family and multifamily, or the height of the antenna plus 20%. Walnut has just 1,500 feet from all residential.
I'm sorry, can you go back to Diamond Bar again? Diamond Bar, you mentioned earlier the 50 feet. Is that for the height zoning or for the distance?
That's the distance, the setback distance from the wireless to the residential zone.
Can you bring up the list that you had earlier?
It's this one?
No. It's a different one. Earlier, the list of Walnuts and Diamond Bar. Not this one, though. Oh, yeah. So, okay. Thank you. Okay.
And to add to that, staff, our consultants did reach out to the city of Walnut, and they had changed the code about 10 years ago for the 1,500 feet from residential parks, schools, and so forth. But since then, they have never been challenged. However, they had denied an application for a provider recently, and they're not sure if that's going to be resulting in a lawsuit. It can potentially, but they're not sure if that's going to happen just yet.
And you know, you mentioned that some commercial zones may eventually turn into multifamily housing. Now, is there a way to write this, does the code to reflect certain circumstances in cases like that? Obviously, yeah, like for example, if Eastland had multi-family homes built on there, then obviously 100 feet is reasonable. But what happens if it's a new development without commercial zoning involved or current commercial zoning involved? Then can a 500 setback be made in that case? Because one will say that low-income communities are being hit the hardest. You know, that's the general argument when it comes to certain rights that residents have and homeowners have and low-income communities have. So, is that something that's possible? In other words, more detail in regards to 100 feet in cases of different criteria that has to be met in order to use that setback.
If I can clarify.
You get what I'm
the
saying?
question.
Yeah.
Are you asking, so right now, our commercial zones have the overlay for residential that was approved by the Planning Commission, the design guidelines for residential existing commercial zones. So you're asking if in those areas we can reduce.
It's kind of like what you said, that if we did more than 100 feet, then it's going to eliminate the potential of actually having the coverage in that area. So those are circumstances where
You would want to reduce it to 100, even though it's multifamily.
Well, I think one of the explanations they gave was that in certain circumstances, that if we did more than 100 feet, that it will be impossible to build a tower or do a tower or whatever the situation is. So those must be at certain circumstances to warrant that, is what I'm saying. Can the book be more detailed? That's what I'm saying. Because then you open it up to too broadly of multifamily. Maybe it's apartments.
I'm sorry. Did you mean that if it's a multifamily zone like MF zoning and it's an apartment, it can be higher than 100 feet, but if it's mixed use, they're exempt? Is that what you mean?
No. So, okay, explain to us one more time why it has to be 100 feet compared to 500 feet.
Because if it was 500 feet, it would, in addition to the 500 feet from single family residential, it would limit most of this. It would eliminate most of the city from allowing a wireless facility.
And is that on case-by-case basis?
No, that's not case-by-case basis. But what is a case-by-case basis is there's something written in the code is if a provider wanted to reduce that by 20%, then they would be able to do that through a conditional use permit process, which is already required. Which is already required for wireless telecommunication facilities. But it'll just be the same process with additional findings.
So for example, if we were to say 500 feet and then have an alternative a conditional use process, is that an option?
If you're able to approve the findings, then.
For the conditional use.
Yeah.
How many cell towers do we have right now?
I'm not sure.
Can I give it a try? I guess regarding land use, we have residential area and we also have commercial area. So residential area predominantly is single residential home prior to a few years ago until the ADU came about. But currently we're talking about residential area as single unit or residential area with ADU. And also commercial area is predominantly for commercial use. However, commercial area, we can also build multifamily unit as well. And those are all considered, once it's being built, it's considered multi-unit, but it's still commercial land use. And that in those area, commercial area, it's allowed for cell tower. However, if they have a resident in those commercial use, then it must be 100 feet away from these buildings.
Okay, great.
Well, too, we have to establish first and foremost what are we considering a single-family residence or multi-unit family. So multi-unit family in the world of real estate, commercial is 5 units or more. So
Yeah,
I think it would have to apply to that. That would need to be in there.
yeah, that's exactly. More details.
Oh, that's what you meant by 5 units
Yeah,
or
more
more.
details.
So it would be based on the zoning. So you have zoning that's R1 or MF. So it wouldn't be based on a single family home with an ADU in the back as a multifamily. It would be if it's in a multifamily zone.
Yeah, that's a later in the future that could work against us because then there would be nothing established as to what is a multi-unit family. So I think that has to be established now.
Yeah, it already is under our general plan.
Right.
Because what she's explaining is the city already has existing multiple family zoning, which is separate from the commercial zone. The thing that we did approve last year was allowing commercial properties to have some mixed use. And in those areas, the mixed use would be a combination of retail on the ground floor and residentials above.
Mixed use also, though, it's mixed with commercial. So that's even a different animal as well. So what we're talking about is purely residential.
I think if we
Right,
were to look
but-
at these map that the city kind of mapped out and it has all the zoning in it, it's in the attachment number 6. Attachment number 6. And in that particular attachment, all the zonings are okay. Thank you.
It's just there can't be any gray area for future.
No, so it's based on the zoning. So if it's in a multifamily zone, and I think that's what they're pulling up, that's where it would be 100 feet. And if it's a single family zone, then it's 500 feet.
I'm not sure that I'm following, but I think what you're trying to say is that if somebody builds like an ADU and a junior ADU on their property, that it's all of a sudden multifamily. No, it's not.
No.
It's
Right.
zoned single family. So I don't know. I'm if that's the concern. I don't think that it's a concern that. I don't think it's a concern. I think it's
not a
already taken
concern
care of.
now. I'm just saying, why can't we just establish what is it?
That's
if it's
what
not,
is actually in the proposed recommendation. So I'm trying to understand what the distinction is, because it would seem to me that if we're talking about if we're talking about commercial changing to multifamily or something like that, and we're saying that we're going to put additional restrictions on where cell towers could potentially be built, when we have to deal with the fact that the vast majority of our commercial districts in the city have to be considered for multifamily development because of our supposed housing shortage in the city, that we need to build 10,000 units by the end of 2030. Ultimately, I don't think that we can have that restriction and then open up the city for the development of housing like we are effectively required to from up on high. Now, I'm going to say I don't particularly care for that requirement, but that is effectively what we're required to do. So if we're going in and we're foreclosing upon, putting a cell tower here, we're effectively saying that we're effectively making it such that multifamily housing can't go in the areas that we've already proposed for purposes of getting our our housing element approved, we are basically undermining that by
So are we
proposing
saying
some
multifamily
alternate.
commercial? Like, are we saying it's multifamily commercial? If that's what it is, let's just put the verbiage in.
No, if you'll recall last year, staff took time because the state, for the housing element, said they had to actually identify properties. And they gave us a listing of various properties. And the ones which they chose to identify for mixed use, they already have their zoning. And so when the mixed use zone, the way it was proposed to us, which affects existing commercial properties, particularly in the downtown, it's going to allow for the commercial on the ground floor and units, residential units up above.
Right.
And so I understand what Nick is saying. That would be undermining the housing element that we've already presented to the state. And there are ramifications if we were to do that.
No, I get exactly what you're both saying. But in that respect, those are not just residential. And so those are clearly commercial. So housing element is saying everyone can have an ADU and a junior ADU. So now there's a 3-unit properties, they're multifamily properties. Now, I know we're not changing zoning or anything. Well, what about in the future? And I'm just saying it just protects.
But zoning is the basis of the regulation, not the number of units that are actually on the property. So, for example, if you have a single-family residence and you decide that you're going to turn it into effectively a mini condo complex, you got 4 units on there, that's not going to change the zoning, and it's still going to be 500 feet. So it's not going to impact. It's not going to impact that because it's zoning based.
Again, so if that's commercial, I mean, so you're saying that it's okay to put it next to a 4-unit?
No, in fact, that's
so 4
not.
units are still considered residential. So if we can only put it with commercial, why don't we just say mixed use commercial or whatever it is? So, things can change in the future. Everybody's going to have multifamilies or, who knows how many, and then all of a sudden we're all multifamilies, and this can apply to everyone.
With all general...
It leaves out any chance.
It doesn't, because with the general plans, the state requires that we update it just like the housing element. Mm-hmm. And part of wanting to get your housing element adopted is so that you can have that 7 or 8 year break. If not, then the state is saying you've got to prepare a housing element much sooner. And so with the general plan, it normally is a document that is approved with a specific time frame. And normally it is at least 10 years. And then, again, we don't know what other new requirements will come down.
I think regarding our zoning code, I guess we have to go back to our zoning code. We had R-A, which is residential agriculture, R-1, 6,000, all the way to R-1, 40,000. That would be, all those are encompasses of a single residential. Anything further than that, it's MF8. I believe those are multi-residential, and MF15, MF20, MF45, so each acre would be 45 units. So those are more multi-units, not the R. All the R's are residential unit, and are the MF all the way to M1, manufacturing. And then we had the other areas, which is OPMU, office professional use. Those are considered commercial. NMU, neighborhood mixed use. These are all the different type of zoning. So starting with the manufacturing portion with 1,000 would be this area right here, MF8, all the way to MF48, possibly M1 as well, manufacturing. And then anything other than that is considered commercial. So we're talking about 500 feet from all the R's zoning, and then 100 feet from all the M zoning. And then the commercials are allowed by rights, unless we're mixed using those commercials, and then it would be 100 feet. So I think what they have.
I don't think that if it's a mixed use that there's a setback requirement. Is that correct?
No setback requirements. So mainly the multi and then the residentials, and then commercials are allowed. Okay.
For the 500 feet from single family, if the concern is if that in the future a single family zone property would be considered as would be, I guess, incorrectly determined as multifamily. In cases like this, we can add single family residential uses or zones, and we can also add urban dwelling units to the 500 feet, because urban dwelling units are basically single family residential with 2 units.
That would be great.
2 smaller units.
It's quite confusing nowadays when they had the ADU, the junior ADU, and I don't know what else is coming up, but in one single residence is like 3. So in the zoning world, we don't call that multi-unit because it's still single residential area zoning. However, it's confusing because some people think of it as multi-unit since you have 3 units in one lot right now, or maybe more coming. Okay, thank you.
What's the, this is a different subject, but what's the zoning for the sportsplex?
Parks and open space.
It has been designated as a park? Okay, great.
For the
Sports.
for big league for yeah, it's
We already
open
answered.
space. Oh, thank you.
Open green space, yeah, great.
Thank you.
Great. You can continue. Staff.
This brings us to the conclusion, and it is recommended that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 236134, 236135, 236136, and 236137, recommending to the City Council to adopt the initial study of a negative declaration, the general plan amendment, zone change, and the development code update.
Great, thank you. We're now open public hearing. Go ahead, speaker. And you are in favor or oppose?
Questions. I have more questions. Specifically, the general plan. We all know that the state is pushing for housing and residential, and everything that I read through here, there seems to be a great push towards building residential. But in one particular, under the general plan, 2.5, there's a wording that says transformative development. Can somebody elaborate on that under the general plan? I think it was 2.5 under that. Can you elaborate on what you regard as transformative? What that means?
Well, what I'll do is let's see what all your questions are, and then I'll make sure, and then staff can respond to them.
And the next thing is, I'm concerned about protecting the businesses in specifically what you guys regard the triangle, the Glendora, the Vincent, and I can't think of the 3rd Street, but it's considered the triangle, as you guys have in your wording. You also speak on under 3.1 encroachment. Although you have wording that says economically strong neighborhoods, and you want to prevent encroachment, I would like somebody to elaborate on that. I don't know what that means. There's existing businesses. So if residents, are you speaking on a residential stance? Are you speaking on a business stance? I mean, how are we to preserve that area for current businesses or future businesses? That's one thing. So encroachment is a word that I want to have elaborated, please. And then I guess on there as well, it says incompatible land uses and intensity. How are you, give me an example on that as far as it pre-existing. on pre-existing, on what that means. So I hope I'm not so vague, but those things struck me in reading under the general plan, specifically to the triangle area. How are we continuing to promote our businesses and yet wanting to provide the residential use, or the residential that needs to come in that's being crammed down every city? So I just want to see how we're going to be equal to both businesses as well as the forcing of residential, if you can answer some of those questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And anyone else would like to speak today in favor or oppose? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing, and then if staff could answer the residents' questions.
I would be able to answer one of the questions that Ms. Gillingham. Oh. Regarding the triangle that was mentioned, the development code update does not make any changes to that triangle is located within the downtown plan and code area. The development code update is not going to make any changes to the downtown plan and code area. So that is going to remain unchanged with the exception of not allowing drive-throughs. Yes. So that's the only change that's going to happen in the downtown plan and code area.
You're gonna get me in trouble with the rules of order. But
the general
if staff could be as explanatory as possible regarding the different subjects that that Ms. Gillingham mentioned.
Do you want to elaborate on that? Because you have it up there.
Yeah. Let's see. Thank you. Where was the policy?
3.1. She also mentioned
3.1, preserving. Okay. Regarding policy and actions currently in the general plan, the zoning code update does not propose any amendments to this portion of the general plan. So this is existing language. It does state to preserve existing housing stock and to incorporate standards in the development code to preserve the existing form and character of stable residential areas and prevent encroachment of incompatible land uses and intensity. From a development codes perspective, this policy and action has to do with the part of the downtown district, particularly the downtown areas, and as Joanne mentioned, as part of the development code. That's part of the existing downtown specific plan, which we are not amending. So I don't know if you want to speak about like any policies or anything.
Great. That was about the transformative zones, or those transformative zones, the businesses on Glendora, the triangle issue, approachments, elaborations, and incapable land use.
Yeah. So policy 2.5 encourages transformative development on the triangle bounded by Glendora Avenue, Vincent Avenue, and Interstate 10. Part of the sub-policies of the general plan is to support revitalization of Glendora Avenue retail. So this is, the general plan is effectively to pretty much enhance the businesses and the development that's already there. And other policies in the general plan are to also brand the area as West Covina's Main Street. This area is part of the downtown specific plan, which isn't being amended as this item that's before you tonight.
Great, thank you. We're now open discussion by the commission. We're now open commission discussion. Commissioner Lewis.
I don't have anything for right now.
Okay. Vice Chair Williams.
I don't have any questions right now.
Okay. Commissioner Becerra.
No questions.
Commissioner Hang. Okay. Okay, and I guess, let's see. I guess my question will be if you could elaborate on the emergency shelters time framing.
So we looked regarding the emergency shelters. We looked at the existing state law framework, the hours of operation. The existing zoning code as it exists today essentially says that everyone essentially has to depart by 8:00 in the morning. That's provisions essentially not in the state law framework. So effectively based on discussion from the Planning Commission at the previous meeting, we removed that requirement, or removed essentially that regulation.
Of 8 a.m.?
Of 8 a.m., yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. And then I think there was another issue in regards to massage parlors, about having doors on the doors or curtains.
Yes.
Does the city have the right to inspect those parlors at any time?
Yes.
You want to, so it's on public record, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay.
Regarding the doors and massage parlors, when that was brought up by the Planning Commission, the thought was that there are several massage parlors that are respectable massage parlors and chains like Massage Envy, Burke Williams, and all of those have doors, and they're not going to go into the city if we're not going to allow them to have doors. And those are desirable type uses to have in a city like West Covina. So what we did was we added provision that allows doors in massage parlors and health spas. However, the actual concern was that there are certain massage uses that are accessory to other uses, like a hair salon or a acupuncture business, that the massage rooms are located in the back door, and those are the ones that are actually of concern. So those types of uses we're not going to allow doors. We're only going to allow curtains.
Perfect. Okay, and then my final question is in regards to, now I understand that it was recommended for 500 feet, and I believe the notices are 500 feet too for single-family homes, or?
The public notification requirement would be 500 feet as measured from the property line that the proposed wireless facility is located on.
Okay, and then, so obviously in accordance with the law, obviously, and the Federal Communications Commission, obviously I understand that argument of 500 feet, but out of, I guess, is that something we could consider in regards to adding a additional feet in regards to the notifications that go out? Assistant City Attorney? So instead of 500 feet, maybe 800 feet notifications requirement to create more public awareness?
So based on the consultant survey, 500, in my experience, 500 feet is generally what's the upper end. Going beyond that, you start increasing the costs to the carrier significantly, and it gets into the city. It becomes an issue potentially. If you make it too expensive, they can still come back and argue it's effectively prohibiting them.
So I think a fair argument would be 800 feet. Then I think it's fair, 800 feet notifications, and continue to have 500 feet as the line, but as the line to allow the towers. But in regards to notifying the residents in general, I think we should meet halfway, and I think 800 feet should be something reasonable if it's legally
Chair, if I may.
okay.
In addition to the required mailers, the notification mailers, we're also requiring signage be posted on the site. So anybody that walks by, whether it's residential or commercial, can see the public hearing notice.
And is there a requirement in regards to how big that signage has to be? And what is that, do you know?
But notification is just grabbing address and mailing out that mailer, right?
No.
Yes, it is. But we have limited staff.
Normally staff don't do that. I mean,
We do that.
I thought notification is.
We fold the envelopes or the notice, the
Oh my
mailers.
goodness.
We
Why
print
don't you
them
guys
out.
outsource
We put
that?
labels on them. We post date it.
So the list came from a vendor.
The list comes from a vendor, and then we verify the radius, and then we send them out.
Need
think
some
there's
student
some-
helper.
I think there's some competitive mail houses out there to do.
No, that's usually what happens in different cities with their planning department. People don't realize that. The staff actually ends up having to stuff the envelope.
Yeah, but I know bigger cities outsource.
The applicant, though, right?
The applicants, but the bigger issue is the more time staff spends doing that, the less time we're able to concentrate on other projects and other applicants, customers at the counter, and so forth. And also, the issue with having applicants do the mailing is that we're going to have to take their word for it. When we do the mailing, we know when we send it out, and we know whether or not we're following the Brown Act and the city's code.
Yeah, they actually
Can't we
do an
pass that?
affidavit.
Can't we charge them for it? And, you can get the temporary help and have them do that.
We do charge them for it. The issue is it's not easy to get the temporary help on a case-by-case basis just to do out the mailers, because in order to hire somebody to do that, then we have to go through an RFP. We have to go through go through the city attorney's office so that they can review a contract. We would have to get the contract signed by different departments within the city, so that all takes time. And when we do something like that, it delays the process on when the hearing can be held, and it impacts the Streamlining Act. So, per state law, we only have a certain amount of time before we can, from the time an application is completed, to take it to the Planning Commission.
But I have a quick question though, because I understand that if it's in the R1 6,000 residential zoning, obviously it's more packed and more residents. But if you're looking at the R1 40,000 residential zoning, you might get only 10 or 30 because of the lot is so huge and that you may not. So 800 feet, it depends by each individual, situations.
Yes.
A certain area, you might only get no more than 30, 20 or 30. But some area in the R1 6,000, maybe there's a lot more. Mm-hmm. So,
yes.
Considering that it doesn't happen that often, maybe we should consider
and
a
if
notification.
it's near an apartment complex or a commercial area, then we have to mail out notices to every single tenant per our code. So that also adds to it.
I know this is a big issue in District 4 and 5, and there's circumstances, like Commissioner Hang has mentioned, the lot's huge, so notification to the homeowners are really they're not getting it. Ideally, it'd be better to get more people involved and awareness in the campaign. Right. Now, there's no doubt that the planning staff and and our staff here at the city work tremendously hard for the work they do for our community and for the residents. Now, I think one of the things to look at, I think, is to look at the costs associated with maybe outsourcing the outsourcing, sending out those notices to a mail house. And I know there's a lot of
what she was explaining. There are state laws that regulate planning. And so that's the reason. That's the reason why the different city planning departments actually have to do an affidavit. They have to take the responsibility on when the notices went out, how many went out for each and every property. So that's something that they're not able at this time to automatically give to somebody else to do.
Yeah, I'm not saying to do that tomorrow. What I'm saying is that there's solutions to solving this issue, and that because we can't put a postage on a mail, or we can't send out mail, should not be an excuse to not notify 800 feet back of residents who may be impacted regarding a project that's going to come their way. And so what I'm saying is we should look into what alternatives the city has at its disposal to be in compliance with state law, but also at the same time satisfy the residents that are concerned with issues like this, especially in District 4 and 5, where there's a tremendous amount of impact going on in those areas.
The other thing that the state now requires, any city that has a website, which is accessible, they place those notices under the city clerk area. And so there is. And there was also the time when they would post in newspapers, but they learned that people tend to go on the website and look electronically.
You know what?
So the other thing,
I never
by
went on the
posting the
website.
site,
I never knew it was
that
going
also
on.
is the other option.
Never till I.
The other thing, if I may add, is part of this development code update is that we are going to require posting signage on the property, which is if you drive by it and it's going to impact you, you will be able to see that something is coming up, and there will be a public hearing regarding a cell tower.
And if I may add, that minimum sign size would be 3 feet by 5 feet, and the letter of notice of public hearing would be mandated to be 3 1/4 inches tall minimum.
And maybe this is an opportunity to expand the internship program for the planning department, so they can help on stuff like this.
We already have interns in our planning department, yes.
Great. So maybe with this additional funding coming in, that there may be room to expand that program to make sure that we're getting notifications out to the residents who are most impacted by projects like this.
Yeah, so Chair, I'm not aware of any specific law specific to the notification radius. All I can know is that in my experience, and I understand the consultant's experience, 500 is the norm. You can increase it if you want to 800. Just understand that it will be scrutinized, and it will be the larger one, the largest radius that I'm aware of, which will bring attention. What the result of that is, I can't say because there's no specific regulation or case law on that specific issue. But
yeah, and I think that we don't have the ill intention of putting a burden on those phone companies by requiring even greater 500 feet requirement. What we're saying is that we want awareness in the process.
Well, and that's the other issue, is if we are...
And that should actually prevent lawsuits from occurring, because in circumstances like last time, now we're in an issue now. So I think by creating more public awareness, that prevents litigation in the long run.
That's fair. And also you should be aware that this would also be applied only to one specific utility, with wireless, as opposed to any other utility, which the notification requirement is not as large.
Okay, thank you. And then now, if there's a motion or a second, or any additional things that comments the commission would like to make, you guys have any additional comments?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 23-6134, resolution number 23-6135, resolution number 23-6136, and resolution number 23-6137, recommending the City Council adopt the initial study and negative declaration general plan amendment number 23-02, zone change number 23-02, and code amendment development code update number 23-01.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the motion, but also add for wireless towers in regards to notifications for single-family homes that the requirement should be notifications to at least 800 feet radius compared to 500 feet radius notifications.
I mean, can I make motions to?
So we have a substitute motion on a substitute motion on the floor. So it'd be appropriate this time to see if there's a second for the substitute.
I'll second the substitute with.
Okay, so the substitute motion it now takes precedence over the original motion.
Okay.
As I understand, it's to approve all the resolutions, but with the addition, revision of changing the notification requirement to 800 feet.
Yes. And to be clear,
Before we vote, I'd like to make a comment. I would just reiterate the concerns that the assistant city attorney put out there. Frankly, the idea that you have a specific notice provision or a specific type of utility that is in excess of any other notice provision in the entire city, you guys are inviting litigation. And I think that's a bad idea.
And
I will be voting no on that, notwithstanding the fact that I am in favor of everything else.
And I would like to make clear that I don't believe that's a litigation issue, because the intention of this commission is not to delay the process of wireless towers, but create notification to the residents to create public awareness in the process. And so we welcome any wireless company who wants to come to our city, who wants to do business in our city. But at the same time, we want to make sure there's public awareness in the process. And I think the law is very clear that the cities have that right to do. And so with that being said, Paulina, can you do roll call?
Give me one sec. I also wanted to add that we're this particular body here as a planning commissioner, and this is what we're supposed to do. Even though the FCC in 1996, if you read their code, which I don't really know on top of my head, but they did give us, the first thing that they give us is that governing our city is to be able to decide where the location, that's what we're talking about, the zoning code. Where should we put this thing? That's number one. There are 3 items that they allow the city as a planning commissioner or city councils to basically dictate where you want it, how should the structure look, should it be 100 feet, should it be 50 feet, should it be 20 feet, how wide the base should be. So this code is what the first thing the FCC did, is to give the city entitlement to say, hey, you go and figure out what it is that you want in your city and where you want to put this thing and how large and what it should look like for your city. So us as a body, the 5 of us, we're basically our decision makers for 140,000 or 120,000 of West Covina residents. And we're here. We're not here to inviting lawsuits, but we are here making decisions for the entire residents. So and we need to make decisions. Some of them are not easy. Some of them are very difficult. However, somehow all of us need to come about, including the lawyers and staff. We have to come together to make a decisions, and this will embody and encompasses the code that everyone else will also look at. And if you look at the FCC code, that's 30, I don't know how many years ago, 1996. But the first thing they did was to give all the cities decision making in terms of what to do and how to do and what this thing should look like. Sorry, where are we?
And Paulina, can you do roll call?
Yes. Commissioner Hing?
What are we doing?
Sorry. So the motion was Chair Gutierrez's motion to adopt the resolutions with the one revision to changing the notification to 800 feet for the telecommunications.
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis?
No.
Commissioner Becerra?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams, or sorry, Vice Chair Williams?
No.
And Chair Gutierrez?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great, thank you. And I'll just say that if the city council asks us why we made that decision, if you could please, staff could please make sure that the concerns are elaborated to them. Okay.
Do we need to do anything else? Will it come back to us, or this is it?
No, it'll go to the city council for their adoption.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Great. We'll now move on to commission reports and comments and miscellaneous items. Would any of the commissioners like to report or comment on an item? Seeing none, we'll now move on to the Community Development Director's report. Paulina, do you have any items to report?
We have a open house this Saturday, November 4th at 6 p.m. at Cameron Community Center. The community is invited to attend. It's just to get to know what programs and services are provided at the center. We also have our Veterans Day celebration on Saturday, November 11th at 11 a.m. Here at West Covina City Hall, and there will be followed by a barbecue for those attendees. So hope to see you there. And the next regular Planning Commission will be held Tuesday, November 14th at 7 p.m. here. And just wanted to add that there's a couple items that will be going before the City Council. We did get an appeal for the Toyota dealership, and that'll be on next Tuesday's council meeting, and an appeal for the revocation of a CUP that will be going in December. So that's it for me this evening.
Great, thank you. Since there's no further business to consider, this meeting is adjourned at 8:02 p.m. Pacific time.